This is OMS Voices, an Amos podcast. I'm Bill Klaproth, and with me is Dr. David Bittanti, who is here to discuss his life of service, OMS, in the armed forces. Dr. Bittanti, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Bill. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, same for me as well. So can you first give us a brief overview of your time as an OMS in the armed forces?
So I joined the Navy in 1985, right out of dental school, as a general dentist, and had a couple of assignments ashore and aboard ship. And then I was selected for residency training in oral and maxillofacial surgery by the Navy. I had the good fortune of the Navy selecting me to go out service for my residency training and had the opportunity to do that at the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. Following my residency, I went back to the ship again and had a tour there, which that's a whole nother conversation that we could certainly have about life aboard ship. And then had the good fortune to then join the residency program at the National Naval Medical Center, Bethesda, as one of the staff there, then over to the Naval Postgraduate Dental School as the head of OMS there, and then back to the hospital after that as the head of OMS and hospital dentistry in the hospital. And then I had some other leadership opportunities as both the senior military advisor to the commander, as well as the deputy commander for integration and transition as we merged a couple of hospitals during that time as well. And then my final tour was as commanding officer of a base, which was truly amazing.
Wow. Well, you're very decorated, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. It was my honor and pleasure.
Yeah. So, Dr. Bittanti, I don't think most people go to dentistry school and then go into the Navy. Is that right? You took an unusual path.
It's not the typical path, no, but there's quite a number of people in all the armed services. The Army, Navy, and Air Force each have a dental corps and a number of officers there, and that includes the OMS community. And so I don't know the exact numbers, but there's a fair number of people who choose that as a career, both just for a brief period of time following dental school or doing an entire career to retirement.
Why did you choose that? Why was that your path? Did you just want to be in the armed service? You wanted to serve?
So that's a very interesting question. I am the first member of my family to go into dentistry. So I had no relatives or legacy or practice to go into and so forth. And then my father-in-law was a career naval officer, a surface line officer. So through marrying my wife and having the opportunity to be exposed to Navy dentistry and the opportunities in the Navy, it's interesting the way it started out. You know, you commit for 3 years, and we said, well, we can do anything for 3 years. Let's give it a whirl and see what happens after that. And 3 became 5, and 5 became 10, and 10 became 30.
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's really interesting. So what a unique path that you've taken.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really think that's really interesting. So thinking back over your service, are there a couple of moments that really come to your memory that really stand out to you? And what did you learn in that time?
Yeah, there are several. I think probably one of the most remarkable ones was being part of a really dedicated and extremely talented team of healthcare professionals that provided innovative care to are wounded, ill, and injured as it related to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And from the providers to the nursing staff to the corpsmen and medic and the housekeeping staff and the administrators and everybody that was involved, it was amazing to see what people could do when they were very focused on a singular mission.
So you were on a ship. You said you were on 3 tours on ships, right? So during those wars, obviously you were active then. So they would, helicopter wounded soldiers in to see you with facial injuries?
So that's part of what, primarily on the aircraft carrier, that's why there's an oral and maxillofacial surgeon on the aircraft carrier.
Do we have an OMS on every aircraft carrier?
Every aircraft. There's 2 surgeons on an aircraft carrier when it's deployed. One is an oral and maxillofacial surgeon, and the other is a general surgeon. And basically, your responsibility there is to provide all the surgical services required for whatever would happen. They're primarily there for servicing the flight deck if there were to be a flight deck accident or that type of thing. As far as the medevac capability, that's not the primary mission of the aircraft carrier, although it could be part of what the mission is that you do. As you may be aware, we also have 2 hospital ships that are very active when it comes to those types of things, the Comfort and the Mercy. So they're a primary medevac platform when needed. But interestingly enough, during the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, the primary medevac was through Europe. So people would be triaged in country, medevaced to Landstuhl Medical Center in Europe, and then depending on what their injuries were, they were medevaced to two primary areas, the National Naval Medical Center and the Washington, D.C. area, and then San Antonio at Brooke Army Medical Center if they had burns. And then follow on, then they would also be involved with Naval Medical Center San Diego.
Okay. So the ships you were on an aircraft carrier? You said 3 of them?
I was on the USS Holland, which was a submarine tender. That was my first ship. And then I did 2 tours on the Enterprise.
Wow. How about that? So your main primary goal was to take care of the soldiers on the ship and the flight deck and the flight crews, right?
That's correct.
So if a pilot's got an impacted wisdom tooth, you got to take care of that, right?
That's exactly correct. And actually, to expand it a little bit, you're really responsible for the care of not only the folks on the aircraft carrier, but anyone in the battle group, which is actually today called a strike group.
Okay, so then they would fly people to the aircraft carrier for you to look at if they had something.
Yes.
Wow, that's really interesting.
It was a wonderful experience.
Wow, I bet. How long do those tours last? Months, right?
Typically, a tour on an aircraft carrier is 2 years. And during that period of time, you may do 1, maybe 2 deployments, depending on the ship's schedule. Typically, deployments are approximately 6 months at a time. Sometimes they can be extended for various reasons or various national security type issues. And so it can be 7, 8 months and so forth.
Wow, that's really interesting. So what was the most rewarding part or parts of your career in the Navy as an OMS?
There's many. I guess if I were to narrow it down to maybe a couple, I would say the first one was certainly the opportunity to provide care to the wounded, ill, and injured from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and also to support their families when they were there, going through probably one of the worst and most challenging periods in their life, and to pull together as a team to support them and to be mission focused, not only myself, but the entire team that was there focused on others as opposed to self, and being there for those folks. That was probably one of the more amazing opportunities that I had. I would say another one was while we were doing all that, we were partnered with our sister hospital, Walter Reed Army Medical Center. And then during the time that all that was going on, we actually merged those 2 hospitals into the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, Bethesda. And we did that without missing a hitch in casualty management and so forth. And so those were huge things, I think, in my career, and certainly memories that I'm not only proud of, but that inspire me regularly when I have the opportunity to think back on those.
Absolutely. I could see how that would be inspiring and rewarding, caring for our military men and women.
It was a great opportunity. And then I think the other opportunity that stands out for anyone considering a life of service in whatever branch of the service is the opportunity to be a mentor and to also be mentored. And there are an infinite number of possibilities for that to occur and for people to have the opportunity to both be mentored and be a mentor. A lot of times, I would say the largest percentage of people always want to do good and be good at what they do. And sometimes it just takes a minor course correction to keep someone on track or get them on the right track. And having the opportunity to do that is certainly available in any branch of the service and any part of a career of service.
Absolutely. And a good message for anyone, anywhere, really, about mentors and mentorship. So what did you find most challenging about being an OMS in the service?
Well, there are a couple of challenges. I would say when I think back on my ship tours and being deployed, no one likes being away from their family. And so there are certain challenges there to the military family as it relates to being part of the armed services. And each of the services has their varying levels of deployment, the Navy obviously on ships. And so that can oftentimes be a challenging period, juggling everything, staying mission focused while at the same time being concerned about your family back home. I would say some of the other challenging things, like I say, dealing with the casualties and then thinking about sort of the secondary effects. Today, resiliency is a big thing, and staff resiliency and so forth are huge things as it relates to healthcare. It was something that became very prevalent to the public as it related to healthcare and the pandemic. But in the situations with the war, we dealt with that quite a bit. And a lot of what we did was in order to support our staff because they were so focused on delivering the care that was needed. We had to make sure that they took the time to take care of themselves as well, because that makes you better at doing what you're really focused on, which is taking care of the patient.
Absolutely. So in your years of service, was there an area especially of interest that you enjoyed doing when practicing oral and maxillofacial surgery over the years in the armed forces?
So I had a particular interest in trauma, which coincidentally was probably even put further to the forefront as it related to the war. I had an interest in sleep apnea surgery and then orthognathic surgery as well. And being an attending at a residency program was a big part of what I did. And I always enjoyed being an educator.
So then, Dr. Battanti, what would you tell a young person considering joining the armed forces or simply leading a life of service as you have done?
Well, I think the biggest thing that I would say in leading a life of service is that there are an infinite number of opportunities to provide service in the military, regardless of what career path that you take. And I'm certainly personally extremely grateful for all the opportunity that the military and in particular the Navy has given me, both personally and professionally. I think that the big thing that folks need to remember is that there's two sides to every opportunity. It's not only what one can get out of the opportunity, but what also someone, depending on how the opportunity is presented, that they can give back to someone else. And so a life of service, whether it be in your local community, in your state, nationally, internationally, anytime you have the opportunity to provide service to someone, I think is a good thing, and it can be personally and professionally rewarding.
That is a great message. What's that old adage? As you're climbing the ladder, grab behind you and pull somebody else behind you up with you at the same time.
That's exactly correct. And in particular, in the military, I would say that's really an important part of what you do. There's a saying that says, anytime that you have a job in the military, you're not necessarily there to do the job. You're there to train your replacement.
Yeah, that's a great message. So I know that you've retired from the military. Are you in private practice now?
No, I did private practice briefly after finishing the military. I did that for 2 years, and then I actually joined the team at the Hampton VA Medical Center, continuing to serve a population that I was obviously familiar with from my Navy career. And I did that for 5 years and retired. And then I just recently joined the team at the Children's Hospitals of the King's Daughter in Norfolk, Virginia, as an OMS and providing clinical care there.
Wow, still a life of service. So we appreciate that greatly. And thank you for your dedication and what you've done in the armed forces. We appreciate that.
It was my privilege, and I appreciate the time to talk with you all.
Absolutely. Once again, that is Dr. David Battanti. And for more information in the full podcast library, please visit myoms.org. And if you found this podcast helpful, please share it on your social channels and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for listening.